Extra, extra, read all about it. All the major social media platforms tend to be calling balls and strikes on free speech these days. We've experienced that ourselves right here on Liquid Lunch. We've been around for quite some time. We're seen every day on Biz TV, going to 40 million homes in America, and on Biz Talk Radio on Westwood One. We're bringing our message of truth all the time. We do have a great Facebook audience who comes in and they give me comments, and I like using viewer feedback to make the show a little more interactive. We've been banned from Facebook multiple times now for talking about hydroxychloroquine, most recently 2 days in a row for playing a clip of Colby Covington praising the president. And you wonder, where does it end? And hopefully it ends very soon with Parler, which is the new sensation coming into social media. And we're joined right now by Amy Peikoff, who's the Chief Policy Officer for Parler. Amy, we need you very badly because these... seems like these social media platforms are becoming political action committees and nothing else. They're not platforms for free speech. I know you guys at Parler are not trying to weigh in on what's free speech.
Well, we are at Parler animated by the First Amendment of the Constitution. Of course, the First Amendment does not apply to private entities, but nonetheless, we feel that we want to operate our business in the spirit of freedom of expression. So we are nonpartisan. We do not curate, moderate content at all based on viewpoint or ideology.
No, I'm sure you have all the top-notch stuff in AI to, vet out like pornography and stuff like that. That's not stuff that you weigh in.
Do you know that we actually allow pornography if it's behind a filter on Parler?
Understood. Okay, very good.
Yes,
we just recently joined Parler. We are trying to adapt.
And by default, the filter is on. So if you just joined, you might not have seen anything because by default, the filter is on. Somebody has to affirmatively turn it off.
Got it. Now I understand. Okay, fantastic. Hey, look, it's free speech too. I get that. I'm no stranger to porn, but I mean, it's not all out, grotesque forum where people are or kids could be exposed to things.
No, and if you go on the guidelines, you'll see that we do not allow our platform to knowingly be used as a, kind of agent of criminal actions of any kind. So you can go ahead and read our community guidelines if you want to learn more about that.
Got it. So now you guys have taken a pretty public stance about, Facebook is this new climate change information center. Sounds like another tool of the left to me. Suddenly, Facebook is going to be weighing in on the science behind climate change. How crazy is this?
I mean, to us, we feel that we should not be doing any thinking for the users. We think the individual user is the best person to decide and to sift through information. This climate change information center that Facebook just started is yet another way in which they are imposing their worldview on their users. And in the release, when they talked about this, they purported to say that they were going to give you only, quote, science-based information. It's the appeal to science, which is just another version of the fallacy of appeal to authority. Who is it that gets to say what is science and what is not? Why don't you let an individual user sift through that? We've seen that also with the hydroxychloroquine material. We've seen them also make other sorts of more politically charged decisions. But, how is it that Facebook becomes qualified to tell us what is science and what is not? Another phrase that they use is leading climate change organizations. What qualifies as a leading climate change organization? Somebody that agrees with their normative conclusions about climate change and about what should be done politically in reaction to climate change? I would say no. We don't purport to do that at all at Parler. We will let anybody from different viewpoints post. We don't fact check. We count on our users to think critically and decide for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work for Overstock.com, and Patrick Byrne, the CEO, was quite the libertarian, good friend of mine. And on a lot of policy decisions on what kind of insurance you want or something, he would employ this egalitarian groupthink where he would just put it out to all the 2,500 employees or so and say, what do you guys think? and it seemed like in almost all instances that I saw, the rule of the mob was the right rule, if that makes sense to you. You know what I mean? The majority usually came down on the right side.
So it's not that we have rule of the mob in terms of content curation. We don't do content curation, right? What we do allow is for individual users to employ the tools that we put in their hands. So we have mute features and block features. We even have a feature that allows a user to mute all instances of the certain terms or phrases from their feed. And so our mission is to provide the control for content curation into the hands of the individual user. We deliver to you a chronological, unadulterated timeline, and you have the tools. You can decide who to follow, and then within your the people that you follow, you can decide to whom you're going to subscribe, and then you could choose what feed you want to look at accordingly. But we don't touch it.
Yeah, what I was talking about earlier was more of like a referendum, and what you guys are doing is creating the users to make a referendum on what is good content or what is not good content.
Yeah, so the analogy, I think, for the example that you gave would be each employee within the company could choose the type of policy they wanted for themselves, which of course doesn't work and scale for a company. So maybe it's not an analogy that works.
You don't think I should use that one anymore?
Well, I mean, I was a philosophy major, so maybe I'm too...
All right, yeah. Well, so was Patrick, so I thought some of this stuff came from philosophy. But one of the things I got to ask you, we were just talking about this, we had quite the active social media millennial on right before you, and I was asking her if there's a way on Facebook that I could mute people's pumpkin picking pictures, because at some point I just get pumpkin picking pictured out. And she said not on Facebook, but if I went on Parler and I said, please don't show me any pumpkin picking pictures, then they won't pop up in my timeline.
Well, okay, so pictures, I don't think we have that feature.
Okay. Yeah.
But, which, I mean, you think about this, whenever there's AI brought into something, that is in some ways cool, but then it's also more data that you're putting in the hands of the company. And so, no, we're not using any AI on pictures to figure out what they are. But if there is the word pumpkin that's posted on a public parlay, yes, you are able to exclude that from your feed. So the person just has to make sure that they type the word pumpkin, and then you'll be safe.
Why does Twitter continue to take a proactive stance against conservative content and not progressive content?
Well, I can only infer, right? So I can't get into their minds at all. A lot of us have guessed that it's because it's furthering the political worldview of the people who are doing the moderation themselves, right? Not necessarily, you could say, okay, it's the leadership, but the predominant kind of sense among the employees might be more of a leftist bent. All the people who are qualified to be fact checkers these days, perhaps the ones who volunteer for those jobs, are also people who tend to go to the left. But we have seen quite a bit of disturbing content in the last few days in the wake of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, for example, that was left up on Twitter and was quite disturbing about what might happen to Mitch McConnell, for example, if he brought up for a vote a replacement.
Yeah. It's really getting weird that, most of our lives now revolve around these platforms to communicate and see what's going on, and the news is happening in real time. Would you guys have any plans to start getting into allowing Parler users to stream live?
We have been talking about adding a live streaming feature and what would be involved in that in terms of developing it in-house versus using somebody else's service and incorporating it into our service. So we are looking at it, and I will pass your feedback on, because I also do believe it would be a valuable feature to provide.
Yeah, because I can tell you, myself and a bunch of other podcasters and streamers that I know would be on there in 2 seconds, because there's no reason, as long as we're not cursing, we're not doing anything objectionable, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to bring truth to an audience that wants to digest it. So,
yeah, really, because what we want is We want a nonpartisan platform, and Parler provides a nonpartisan platform, but right now we are in the process of expanding our functionality. So it's understandable that a lot of people, when they come and they say, oh, well, you don't have this functionality that I'm accustomed to, that they really want it. So we are developing new features as fast as we can. I think you're going to be excited about some of the stuff we have coming down the pipeline.
Tremendous. We'll hopefully we'll have you back. Thank you so much for trying to keep some balance out there, and we'll be streaming the minute you tell us we're allowed to. Amy Peikoff, Chief Policy Officer for Parler, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Parler.com. Come on over and join us.
Parler.com. WTF right after this.